Hello and welcome to another episode of the Stalktober special event from the heart of the Jakuls. I'd just like to take a moment to address something that while most of these stories fit perfectly into the heart of the Jakuls category, a lot of the ones I'm telling in this series are much more recent than other tales I've previously relayed to you. Keep that in mind. Many are not fully codified as of yet. But moving on, I'm happy to be your host Lothran, and let's dig right into the next tasty morsel. So hurry up and grab a snack, settle down in your favorite spot, get real nice and comfy, and listen close to Just a Touch. Don't touch it! Don't touch them! Don't touch a single one of any of the things that are in this room. Look around. The instructor waited for his pupils, not just to glance, but to drink in their surroundings. Anyone notice anything? He asked of the group. One boy spoke up, though in a stilted, hesitating fashion. It's a spacing? He moved his hands wildly in a confusing manner. All the, diamonds, I forget the other name, they're, all spaced out with a good 10 meters or so between them and the walkways, I think? Is that right? Excellent observation, Parak, but poor execution. Work on your presentation skills. The boy beamed and then wiped the smile off his face and nodded sullenly. The walkways add even more space to keep roving or unwary hands at bay, and keen eyes may have noticed a flicker of light every now and again. This room contains the most heavily shielded storage areas in all of the rest of the areas within the Corundum Spire combined. Do not attempt to touch the objects that you see here. The instructor marched forward, commanding the respect and attention of his students following in his wake. Many of these have decayed into what is known as a shard. The Vu created them long ago through an unknown process, along with pretty much everything else in the deep well. But even in this decayed and near unfunctioning state, these slender, cracked diamonds, once fully functioning hives, store incredible power, and can unleash impossible to comprehend destruction if placed in the wrong hands. Do not attempt to touch them. You will die. Instructor Methag? One of the lads began and continued, a little fearfully when Methag turned one of his patented baleful stares his way. Why are you showing us this if it's so dangerous? He tried not to stare up or hide his gaze by finding his feat more interesting than anything else in the room. Everyone knew how Methag hated that sort of timid behavior. Oh, well, I have good news. All of you have graduated the initiate process. There was a hushed little celebration. Bad news, however. More than one muttered or hushed, downtrodden, thinking I knew it about themselves. All of you will soon have to select your first facet of specialization, and in so doing begin to take on much more responsibility and the understanding that every citizen of Corundum is here to serve a greater purpose beyond just themselves or their own desires. Methag paused as he eyed each of them in turn. There's no guarantee that you'll make it through this process. That's why I like to show off this room at this stage. We're in a room larger than the cities some of you were fortunate enough to be born within. Think about that. Mull it over. This room and its contents aren't even the worst of what we have to protect and study, not by a long shot. Absorb that. Sound too stressful? Sound too dangerous? It is for a lot of people. I won't be mad if you duck out now. Being a craftsman or a tradesman or a smith, all of that is perfectly respectable, a life to lead, and every society requires those sorts of people to function. So, you're not going to stop us if we leave? one of the girls asked. Methag shook his head. You won't be disappointed? She asked again. Methag once more shook his head and remained calm and silent. This room is the precise reason why I don't teach initiates anymore. Other people can't dash my hopes. They can only choose to act and decide for themselves. Methag paused, making sure he had all of their attentions. Things will only increase in difficulty and danger from this point onward. Please, if you think this life and that pressure isn't for you, then do us all the favor of having to mourn the loss of you and whomever you take with you when you finally snap and go. Do anything else. Save us from that trouble you will be in the future. Methag leveled an iron-hard stare at the lot of them. For the first few minutes, no one spoke or made any kind of move. Methag just waited as he continued to force the weight of his mind against theirs. At about 5 minutes, the first of them fled, turning back the way they had come at a brisk walk. Then a few more. After that, there was a brief flood, and at the 10-minute mark, 2 more left the small knot that was left, and the rest stayed staring at Methag. I honestly can't believe my eyes. This is how you maintain such low class numbers and such a low record of graduates that ended up hurting themselves or someone else? Annan turned to his old professor, fairly incredulous with these results. It may be harsh, but it is effective, Methag replied. You don't seem to have noticed. Here, let me zoom in. There you are. Your other friend, the one that just passed from his injuries. And there. It's Rahl. Just look at him, staring me right in the eyes. I knew he was on the path for great things when he refused to turn away from my gaze. No one stared at me with such distinction when I was pulling this trick. Not before or since. Oh, man. I didn't even remember this. Annan's eyes lit up with what he was seeing. That was so long ago. I was so short. Jesus. You keep all of these? Yes, I keep them all. 12 years. That's how long. It's actually why I called you here. I have a little bit to ask you. Other than the memory, what does this exactly have to do with me? Well, you've been an instructor for a little more than a year now. No. Stay silent, listen up. You've been moving from project to project, not really finding your place. And I'm beginning to lose my spark with teaching. Hear me out. I think you're the perfect candidate to replace me on the roster. Right? What? You're retiring? But you've led as the introductory instructor for decades. What about Rahl? Have you offered him this job? Methag laughed a little darkly towards his former pupil. Why would I do that, given this evidence here? He gestured to the display. Even if Rahl took the job, he'd be miserable. He's an explorer, a tinkerer, a creative sort to say the least. But he'd never have the patience to deal with the half-dry sponges that walk into these halls. No. You're a much better candidate for the job than he. You don't think I have the adventuring spirit in me? Is that it? Come now, Annan. I was there when you returned, wasn't I? Sure, you were glad to be back. But Rahl has been out a dozen times since that grand adventure. Further than he was when you 3 were gone. It's his way to do those things. I'm not saying you'll never be roped into those trips. I've had a few in my day with Preceptor Valen. Rest his time-addled mind. Such a pity that. But don't you really think you could do all that for a lifetime? Could you? Is that what you really think? You're more the settling sort. Besides, Ral's digging into the songs. That's danger no one's ever even considered possible before. I know you, Anand. That's not you. Anand sighed, letting all of the air trapped within him slowly trickle out. You're right. I wanted to stop for a long time now. I just couldn't tell him. I couldn't decide just to not be there for him, you know. When we're out on the adventure, he needs people to look after him. I do, in fact. Valen and Ral are intensely similar, infuriatingly so. Trust me, Anand, you'll love teaching, seeing the world from a fresh perspective, while learning as much or more as you get to teach. It's pretty incredible. Mithag turned off the display, gesturing for them to leave his humble office. It's important to not just know who you really are, but to admit it out loud every now and again. Anand stood his ground, addressing his teacher with a final thought. I'm not a hero, Anand spoke to Mithag, sort of tearfully, and then coming to terms with what he had said, and now more fully understood. Neither am I, Mithag replied almost as mournfully. Neither am I. And so it is. We've come to the end of our time together. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I did. As often as I can manage, I've been your host, Lothran. And this was just a touch. Another tale from the heart of the Jakuls. I leave you as I choose with Brumble's wonderful extra skills.
Sorry. Okay. Hello and good night, everyone. Leave your comments down below. Like and share to help us grow and feed a hungry Brumble. That's me. And don't forget, we hope each and every one of you remembers to stay safe out there. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.